Are they normally that much?
You're gonna have to breastfeed our child till he's 18.
Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm doing another reaction video on how people are realizing that inflation is here to stay and that it's sticky, like the Federal Reserve Chairman says. But more so to ask you to understand what inflation is. Understand what the symptoms of inflation are and teach them to your children. There's one clip in specific that I really want to concentrate on here because it seems that this person has no idea what inflation is, why it occurs, and thinks that turning into a communist world or a communist country would fix inflation. So listen to this.
I'm fed up with how much it costs to eat. Like, it's to the point where it's like, how is we supposed to be the moms like the TikTok girlies where we taking our kids to the aquarium and it's $65 per kid to get in the aquarium when we could barely feed them? I spent $425 on groceries a week and a half ago and I'm running out of stuff already. I look in the freezer, ain't nothing left but a half a pack of ground turkey and a whole chicken. Where is the rest of the food at? I just grocery shopped. The juice gone, eggs dwindling, like it's too much. Then you can't even eat out either. Why is Wingstop $18.99 for a 10-piece? Since when? It used to be $10. $10 for a 10-piece with the fries back in the day. What is going on?
How many of you can relate to this lady's struggles, ladies and gentlemen? How many of you have gone to the supermarket and taken a look at your basket after paying and realizing, wait a minute, that was $350 I just spent and that's all that we got for it? And although I cannot comment too much like on the fast food prices, I can say that I went out for a burger this last week, not with the bun, all right, but I went out. I think the name of the place is Fat Burgers. Very, very good food there, or at least the burgers were really, really good. So I recommend that anyone that lives in Fairbanks go check out Fat Burgers. They sell very good stuff there. But ladies and gentlemen, even though I had one of their big burgers without the bread, all right, I'll say it again so I don't get attacked by those of you that are like, hey AP, I thought you were on a carnivore diet. Yes, I am. Even though I bought one of their big burgers, ladies and gentlemen, it was like $23 for one of their big burgers. Isn't that crazy? You remember? I remember. Let's go down memory lane really quick, all right? So we can get to the rest of this video. I remember when I just had a young family. It was myself, Mrs. Alaska Prepper, and Victor. And he was maybe 1 or 2 years old. We lived in Michigan. And I think the name of the place, I don't think it's there anymore, but it was called Hot and Now. And they used to sell hamburgers for like 29 cents. And we used to go there. We used to get 3 hamburgers, we used to get a small fry, and we used to share a large drink, and it was like $2 or $3 for all of us. So we used to have a cheap meal for like $2 or $3. Now you can't even get a drink in many places for less than $3.
Anyone else in Canada finding it hard to work a full-time job, but knowing that that is not enough money to survive at all anymore, and you basically have to do a side hustle or there's literally no chance to get ahead, but because of your full-time job you are so exhausted you don't have energy to do a side hustle, but you know if you don't, you will never be able to buy a home, have a family, or even get a friggin' cat? Or is it just me? Because this isn't fun. Okay, you're kind of like every year going down while inflation's going up, just being like, please help me.
It just goes back to tell you the same thing that I've been telling you for a long time now. Your wages will never be able to keep up with inflation. And I surely do hope that there are some new viewers, at least on this video, and that you at least get woken up to the fact that your wages, ladies and gentlemen, were never meant to keep up with inflation. And the reason for that is because that's the way that the system was built, to eventually have 2 classes of citizenry, one of the haves and one of the have-nots. Now ask yourself truthfully and honestly, if we continue to go down this road of the way that the governments are spending money, running up deficits, printing new money into existence, creating inflation, do you think that your wages will ever be able to catch up and even recoup those years where it lost purchasing power? Ask yourself that question, and then ask yourself, what am I going to do about this? How can I protect myself? How do we fix this? Because that's how we start. We have to start by having a conversation as to how can we fix this, and how do we protect ourselves against this, because it's going to continue to happen for a very long time until the system is over.
It's absolutely mind-boggling when you have to explain inflation to somebody who's older than you, right? When, because say you're making $40,000 a year today, right? And you go talk to some boomer and they find out you're making $40,000. They'll say something like, "Oh, I was making $40,000 a year back in 1970. I could buy a house in a second lake house." Well, you want to know what $40,000 in 1970 is the equivalent of today? $100,000. Are you confused? That's because I lied. It's $250,000. Are you confused? It's because I lied again. It's $310,000. If you made $40,000 in 1970, it was like making $310,000 today.
Did you all catch that? Those of you that are up to date with what happened in 1971, did you all catch that? In 1970, $40,000 was the equivalent of making about $310,000 today. What is the difference between 1970 and today, ladies and gentlemen? In 1970, the dollar, the Federal Reserve note, was still backed up by gold. In 1971, the gold backing was taken away from our dollar by President Nixon, pretty much giving the banks free rein on printing as much money as they want and inflating the money supply. Now you are working for literally pennies on the dollar in real wages. Now let's listen to what this next person has to say, because although she's very careful not to say it out loud, she pretty much puts it in between the lines. And this is why I feel that videos like this, even though it's a reaction video, it's important that you show this and teach your children that this is not the solution to inflation. Listen to this.
Inflation's pretty bad right now, huh? I mean, eggs are like, what, $6, $7? It's terrible. We all hate it. It's a bad time. And it's all just corporate price gouging, which they actually knew.
Do you really think that it's corporate price gouging? Now, I understand that there's a whole bunch of companies that have colluded with the government, and this is not a free market as it is meant to be. This is what is called crony capitalism, not capitalism. True capitalism is freedom. Crony capitalism is when industries, when corporations collude with governments and pretty much buy them out. All right, pretty much buy our senators, our congressmen, the people that make the laws, in order so that they can make laws that will favor only them. Those corporations that are big enough and rich enough to buy our politicians' votes when it really counts. Okay, so it's not necessarily corporate greed, because we are seeing inflation. It is the government printing money, and although there are two sides to everything, yes, corporations, when they get too big and powerful enough to buy the government, they become evil. However, without the government allowing them to get away with that, then they wouldn't be able to get away with that. And when she talks about what the definition of inflation was, as it was propagandized there on that article she was referring to, inflation, ladies and gentlemen, the definition, just like the definition of a lot of things, have been changed in the past several years. The root definition of what inflation is when the monetary supply is inflated. It's when more money is added to the monetary supply. And I'm saying money here in place of fiat currency, right? So when the monetary supply is inflated, it makes all of the other dollars worth less, meaning that you can buy less goods or services with them. Inflation is not, although they changed the definition to go in line with this more, what I'm saying now. Inflation is not the prices of things going up. The prices of things go up because of inflation, meaning that the prices going up is a symptom of the money supply being inflated.
I mean, when I worked in retail, we had to change the price stickers on our products like once a year because of inflation. But inflation isn't something that happens magically, independently of corporations raising the price of things. The inflation is the corporations raising the price of things.
I hope that what I already explained to you allows you to understand that the statement that she just made is 100% wrong.
So far, the Fed has raised interest rates in order to combat inflation and is likely to do it again in May. That doesn't really do much. And hilariously enough, it's actually made house prices go down because interest rates are so high that people extra can't afford a house right now. And there's been hella layoffs. Hello, hi, how are you?
Do you know how really bad inflation in the US was handled before? Like, it's a capitalist country with a free market, so like surely they, I don't know, let the market handle it, right? Supply and demand and all that? Wrong.
During World War II, FDR's administration actually bypassed the free market and implemented a system of rations for, the common goods like flour, wheat, meat, sugar, all those common things.
She is working her way into saying that we ought to be a government or a country that imposes capital controls, meaning pretty much telling you what you can and can't do with your money. And I do believe, you can correct me in the comments down below, that these ration books that were imposed during World War II was not because of inflation, but because we needed the goods in order to send over to the men that were fighting the war overseas.
FDR's administration also introduced price controls and set maximum prices on non-ration goods, and it worked. Inflation also got really gnarly under Nixon in the 70s. They had an inflation rate of like 5.84, which I think ours is like 7%. So he actually issued an executive order imposing a 90-day freeze on wages and prices for the first time since, you guessed it, World War II. And he said that if anyone were to raise prices during that time, they would be subject to arrest.
What she doesn't say here, ladies and gentlemen, about that Nixon era where he imposed price controls for the 3 months or so, is that yes, price controls were set, but they didn't work. Because after they were over, prices skyrocketed. Take a look at rent now as a great example of how price controls don't work. You take a look at how the government and most governments, i.e. state governments, set price controls on rent during the health crisis. The people, the landlords, they had no choice. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? They had to go along with what they were being told to do by the tyrannical government that they were under in whatever state they were under, because that's exactly what it was. But look at what happened once those price controls got taken off. Rents are skyrocketing. Rents all over the country are skyrocketing, doubling, sometimes tripling in some cases. And some of you may come and say, wait a minute, commercial real estate is really, really low. Yes, commercial real estate, because another one of those things that the health crisis allowed the government to do was to get rid of a whole bunch of mom and pop shops and the middle class. So there's a whole bunch of commercial real estate that is not going to be used probably anymore. So no, price controls do not work. It always sounds good on paper, ladies and gentlemen, but in actual action, when they put it to action, it never works. It has never worked.
Obviously, these aren't ideal solutions, given that both instances involved wage freezes and were implemented under the constraints of capitalism, which means they were only temporary until the next market crash.
I mean, it's probably a way better option than, just not giving people raises and stuff when this is how high inflation is. Inflation is really a feature and not a bug of capitalism. I mean, it's just not a good system. It's really not working at all. Perhaps we need a new system, like public ownership, the means of production instead of private ownership.
Let's stop right there real quick, all right? So I hope that so far during our discussion, you understand what the difference between capitalism and crony capitalism is. Look it up, ladies and gentlemen. There's actually a definition for capitalism and a definition for crony capitalism. They're two different things. Then ask yourself, under the system by which we are governed today, what do we have? Crony capitalism or capitalism? Let's go ahead and finish it off with this little clip because I just think that this is kind of funny. How many of you have felt this way? He doesn't normally do the shopping.
Get a full gallon.
We really need to get cows and chickens. Are you serious?
Like, we need to get cows and chickens.
Live on a farm.
Yeah, well, you're gonna. $8 for styrofoam that I'm just gonna throw away.
Yep.
That's how I felt when I went to Costco and watched that video. It's on a video that I put out on a Costco shopping trip. That's how I felt when I looked at the paper plates. The paper plates that years ago, the good ones, you know, the nice ones that you do for barbecues, not the styrofoam ones. But those paper plates, for years, they were like $12 for 200 and something of them. Not a bad deal. $20, ladies and gentlemen. That's how I felt. The same way this guy's feeling right now. He goes, we're going to be washing these styrofoam plates.
We washing these.
Are they normally that much?
Yes, they are.
Must be a price to be healthy. How come the world wants you to eat healthier, but they charge out the yin yang for healthy food? I'm just gonna be all fat and sassy. Even the ramen has went up. Back in the day, you get a good pack of ramen for $1. But we're gonna have to go to this. You're gonna have to breastfeed our child till he's 18. Family size?
No, we get the little one. Cheaper.
Oh, yeah. What was I thinking?
He said, I'm just going to have to get fat and sassy.
Is that how much it usually is? Like, I'm doing the math in my head, and I just don't see how this is possible. God is working miracles through our bank account right now for us to be able to eat. That's the only explanation.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and leave it off at that. I hope you had a little bit of fun, at least, that it was at least a little entertaining. We do not need to become a communist nation in order to fight inflation and win. We need to become two things, ladies and gentlemen: a true capitalist nation, because capitalism equals freedom, not crony capitalism, right? Remember that. We don't need to become communists. We just need to have a form of governance that is actually there for we the people, that actually treats money the same way that you treat money, knowing that at the end of the month, if there's no more left, there's nothing else that you can get, meaning that you live within your means. That's what they have to do. They have to represent the will of the people, of us not wanting to pay so many more taxes because they continue to deficit spend money that they never have, that was never earned into existence, instead putting it on the backs of us and our children with the interest payments that we will have to be making in the future. Those are just a few of the small changes that we can make in order to have a much better world that is a lot less violent, and a world where there will actually be a lot more equality within the equity of the people, at least within this nation. I hope you understand that, and I hope that you do your own homework and understand that the best thing to do is not to become a communist or socialist nation, but to instead become more free than what we already are. There's a lot of room to improve. Having said that, I hope that you have a great day, ladies and gentlemen. God bless every one of you. God bless America. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out.